everyone, my name's Fran. I am a Newton St Cyres YFC member, and today I'm going to show you how to make butter if you ever want to do it for the Devon County Show or maybe just as a club activity. I've done it twice at the Devon County Show, so I am by no means an expert. There are lots of really experienced butter makers who are ex-YFC members who I'm sure would be more than happy to show you the ropes, maybe come along to an evening at the club and do it for you as an activity. And Devon YFC will provide pretty much all of the materials that you need at the show. So they'll provide a stainless steel bucket. We're in my house in lockdown. I don't have a stainless steel bucket, so we're using a big pan. They'll provide a really big sieve. Again, I only have a tiny sieve, but I'm sure it'll do. They'll provide butter muslins. You need 2 of those, and a dishcloth, a jug, a pint of cream, a salt shaker, some salt, some scales, a thermometer with Fahrenheit on it if you can, a wooden board, and then your butter paddles, which need to be soaked in cold water so that they don't stick. And then you need to provide a bowl, a spatula, a wooden spoon, and a rotary whisk. This one is kind of weedy, so try and get a better one than this if you can, but again, it's the only thing I have right here. And then at the show they will also have iced water and hot water from a boiler so that you can heat things up and cool things down. Okay, so first thing you probably want to do is just check the temperature of your cream, because you will almost certainly need to cool it down, especially at the show where the tent is hotter than the sun. So you want it between 52 and 54 degrees Fahrenheit or 11 and 12 degrees centigrade if you're feeling more modern. This needs cooling down, so at the show you can use the iced water in a bucket just to cool the cream down. I'm just going to pop this in here for now and just tell you a bit about how it's judged. So I've got the list of points here. So it is judged on how you make it and also on how the butter is. So there's 5 points for time, there is 5 points for appearance, there's 5 points for equipment preparation, 30 points for the breaking water and the grain of the butter, so that's how much water is in it, and they'll watch you make it as well, watching to check you're not smushing the grain out of it. 15 points for the makeup, 15 points for the texture and method, and 5 points for the washing up, so that's important too. While that's cooling down, I'm also just going to measure out my salt. So officially it's salt to taste, so it's kind of up to you how much salt you put in it, I believe. I like quite salty butter, so I'm gonna put 10 grams in for a pint of cream, which is quite salty to me. So here we are. And that just goes in your shaker. In terms of what you should wear, if you want to do it at the show, it's a good idea if you can find a white coat or just borrow one. And if you're a girl, make sure your hair's tied up, and you can wear a little white cloth tied around your hair as well, just to make sure none goes in the butter. The other thing you're going to want is a pin or a needle, just so that you can pick out any impurities from the butter, because especially when you're doing this outside at the show, you will end up with all sorts of interesting little black bits in your butter, which is obviously not ideal. So this is now just coming down nearly, hopefully, to the right temperature. It will take a while, and at the show especially, it is a bit of a pain, and now it's going to be a bit of a pain too. So now it is down to temperature, which does take a little while. You can pour it in the bowl. And then start whisking. I've got quite thick cream here because it's locked down and it's all I could get. So hopefully you won't have to actually scoop yours out like this. There we are. Okay. When you're working, just try and make sure everything is kept as clean as you can. Just make sure everything's as clean as you can, because they do judge you on that. So if you can make sure everything's nice and clean, then it might get you a few extra points. Just gonna get some water on my cloth so I can wipe that off. Just lay that on there. Okay. So now once you've got your cream down to temperature, you're gonna whisk it with your rotary whisk. So you want to whisk it until it's kind of grainy in texture, and there's like sort of beads of water on the bottom, kind of over whisked compared to what you would normally whisk cream. If you'd eat it on a meringue, you haven't whisked it enough. It should not look appetising particularly at this point. Okay, so it should look grainy in texture, and you might be able to see those little beads of water. If I shine it into the light, I'm not sure if you can, but it should look grainy in texture, and there should be kind of little beads of water coming out. It should look really over whisked and a bit like scrambled eggs. Okay, so once your cream looks really gritty and a bit like scrambled eggs, then that's the breaking point, and then you need to add your breaking water, which should be 2 degrees lower than the initial temperature of your cream. And often what you'll need to do is kind of show the judges or tell the judges what temperature you're making the water compared to what the cream was. So you might want to say, my cream was at 52 degrees, so my breaking water will be at 50 degrees, so that they know that you know what you're talking about. Okay, so you'll probably just do your breaking water in the same jug that's had your cream in it, so it doesn't matter if it's a little bit creamy, the water, because it's going in with the butter. And you want it, as I said, 2 degrees Fahrenheit lower, which this now is, but you'll need to use your cold water and your hot water to get it there. And as I said, tell the judge. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to pour 3 spoons of the breaking water in here, and then give it a mix. Okay, so what you're going to do is pour 3 spoons of breaking water into the mixture twice, so 6 spoons in all. So this is my second lot now. Okay, so after you've added your breaking water, you are going to start to beat it. Just be careful here because it can go everywhere with your wooden spoon. And what you're trying to do now is start to get some of the water out and make it come together, and it'll start to look a bit more like butter, sort of like grainy butter. So you're going to start to beat it with your wooden spoon, as I said, and clean down the sides of the bowl with your spatula when necessary to make sure that you're kind of being nice and clean about it. Okay, so you're going to basically beat it until the buttermilk, which is the kind of watery milk-like stuff, starts to come out, and the butter grains start to kind of come together a little bit. They maybe start to get a bit bigger. According to the instructions, they should be the same size as a grain of wheat. I don't have any wheat to measure it with, to be honest, but basically it should start to look separate. Basically it should start to look like this, and you can see that the buttermilk has separated from the grains of butter. Be patient, especially if it's hot weather, it will happen. Okay, so once your buttermilk has started to separate from the butter, then you need to strain it. So you're going to get your bucket and your sieve, which will be much better than my sieve, and take one of your muslins, try and keep the other one fairly clean and dry, and just place the muslin in the sieve, and then pour the butter. Ooh, try not to make a mess. Kind of looks like a brain. Actually, I don't know what a brain looks like. Basically drain off all of the excess buttermilk. Okay. Now, as a general rule, you're not supposed to squeeze it. So I won't. Okay, so then you're going to take your butter, which is starting to look like butter, yay! and put it back in your bowl. Okay. And as I said, you might want to be using your other muslin the whole way through just to cover your bowl, keeping it fairly clean, but just so that you're not getting too many bits in it. So once you have strained the buttermilk off of your butter, then you need to wash your butter. So you need to do this in water that is 6 degrees below the original temperature of your cream. So again, if it started at 54, you want it to go down to 48 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm doing this all in Fahrenheit. For centigrade you need to halve them, I believe. I think it's like 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 degree of Celsius. And you need to do this using about as much water as you originally had cream, so about a pint of water. And you want it 6 degrees below. Nice and cold. Okay, so you just then strain it all out, all of the washing water. Okay. So what you're doing is you're washing your butter here, and you should repeat this washing at least 3 times in total, or until the water starts to run. Oh, my tiny sieve. So you should repeat the washing until your water starts to run clear. So this is my second one, my second wash. Okay, so this is my third wash. You'll notice I've kept my thermometer and spatula and everything in the jug, and that's to keep them clean and try and keep your work area as clean as you can while you work. You will be judged on that as well. So now the water is pretty much running clear. Right, so when you're once you've washed your butter 3 times, or however many times you've chosen to wash it, and you will have 45 minutes at the Devon County Show, so you don't want to wash it like 20 times, however warm the tent is. So once that's done, then you can put it back in the bowl, and now you can add your salt. So with the salt, the thing to remember is you should add half, and then you should turn the butter and then add the other half. And try and get rid of it all, otherwise the judges might come and check your salt shaker. Afterwards to see whether there's any left. So don't forget to wash it up as well, which I've definitely done before. So when you're doing it at the show, if you try and keep your bowl covered like this, it'll help you to try and keep the butter fairly nice and clean. And once you've got your salt in there, what you're going to do is then use your wooden spoon to start to press the butter against the side of the bowl and start to squeeze some of the water out. What you don't want to do is cream it. So you know, if you make a cake, you like cream the butter and the sugar together and you kind of smush it. Don't do that. You want to just push it so that you keep the grains inside of the butter nice and grainy. It's a little bit different to the texture of butter that you buy in the supermarket. So it's going to start off looking quite a lot now like scrambled eggs. And this is the point then when you're going to start to try and squeeze some of the water out of the butter. Start to squeeze the butter and kind of move it round the bowl. I don't know if I can show you. So you kind of squeeze it and then move it, so you don't kind of smush it. And what you'll find is that the water will then collect, hopefully on the other side of the bowl, and you can just tip this water out as you go. Back over there, just in case the butter comes flying out. Okay. It's really important that you squeeze lots of the water out of the butter at this point, because if you were to leave the buttermilk in it, then that's what would make the butter go rancid and not keep very well. So they will check your butter, they'll press on it with a knife when they judge it to see how much water's in it, and then they'll not be happy if there's lots of water in it. Sometimes you might notice some impurities as you do this, so this is a good time to get your needle and just flick them out. Just put them on the side there. There we are. Okay. So just kind of squeeze the butter and move it around your bowl, and you can hopefully, you'll be able to see all of the water coming out of it as you do it. It's quite hard to do at this angle, I'll be honest. So yeah, keep pushing it and squeezing the water out of it, really until you can't really get much more water out of it. You'll never get all of it out of it, but try and get as much as you can out. Okay, so once you've squeezed as much water as you can out of the butter, it should look like this. Okay, so once you've squeezed all the water out of the butter, or as much as you can get out of it, then you are going to take your paddles, which will have been kind of soaking so that they don't stick to the butter. Okay, take your butter out, a little bit left behind. And then you can start to work it on the board, and for that you hold one, move this jug out of the way, so you hold one at a 90-degree angle like this to the board, and then with the other one squeeze it against it and down, and then turn it, and then do the same again. And you want the board to be a bit wet as well when you're doing this again, so that the butter doesn't stick to it. And you'll find that you do need to just wipe up the board. Because there will still be water coming out of it at this point, however hard you try for there not to be. Especially if it's warm, you don't want to overwork it at this point, because otherwise it will just get really hot and mushy. So just be really careful of that. Again, any more bits that you notice that shouldn't be there, just get rid of those. Okay, so once you've got all of the, or as much water as you can out of the butter, then you can start to shape it into a rectangle. If you've got more butter than I have, then you can measure it out and make the rest into a roll. So you want, I think, a £1/2 pound block, so that's 8 ounces, but I haven't got enough to worry about that, so I'm just going to do it like this. There we are. When you choose your paddles, if you can, try and choose ones with a nice sharp edge to them along this edge and corners, because when you do a design, that can make it a bit easier. Okay, so once you've got that there, to make a design, there are a few different designs you can do. You could just leave it plain if you wanted to and you're running out of time, but you can do diamonds, where you press down so there's the lines of the paddle on it, and then you score across to make diamonds. Then there's the gate, which is when you kind of put a bar in the middle and then you put diagonal bars on it. So you go like that, and then like that, and then like that, and apparently it looks like a gate. My favourite is the wheat sheaf, because I think it looks quite impressive, but it's actually not that hard to do. So that's what I'm going to do. So just press down with the paddle, okay, so that you get the lines on there. Then halfway along, take the end of your paddle and push in both ways like that. And then do the same at the end, just before the end at each side. And then with the corner, the best corner that you have, so with the best corner that you have, just push that in on the sides so that you get a sort of, well, it looks a bit like, well, it looks a bit like a wheat sheaf, or maybe like a time turner. And then you can again use the paddle just to create the bit that ties the wheat together. I would say, again, having a dull edge kind of makes that a bit harder, but it looks a little bit like a wheat sheaf. I'll show you in a second. So you can see that's my wheat sheaf there. And when you do the pressing in on the sides, because you're angling it a different way, you get like a diamond pattern. But again, these they're a bit dull at the edge, so it's a little harder to do. Okay, then you need to wash up. So put a muslin over your butter while you wash up so that it doesn't get all gross and buggy. So once you've covered that up and your butter's ready, then you can wash up, and you always start with the cleanest stuff first. So get some really, really hot water, as hot as basically you can handle it. Don't scald yourself in your bucket. And then you're going to start with the cleanest stuff first, which will usually be your salt shaker. And just take one of your cloths, whichever one you think is maybe a bit wetter, and start to wash everything up. You don't have soap, so that's why you want nice and hot water. And the reason you don't have soap, I believe, is because soap can prevent the butter from becoming butter. So then I would wash up your jug next, so that you've got somewhere to put your nice clean utensils. And then you want to make sure that you dry them as well as you can as well, because you will get marks taken away apparently for not having dry utensils at the end. Okay, and then the last thing you're going to wash is the bucket itself. So once you've washed everything else up, make sure any random bits of butter that might have splashed everywhere have been wiped up. I always seem to make a mess. I'm sure I lose lots of points for it. And then just finish by wringing out your cloths and getting out as much water as you can from the cloths. They will wring your cloths out to check. whether you've managed to get any water out of them. Once you've squeezed all the water you possibly can out of your cloths, then you can just lay everything out and they will inspect it. And you can leave your butter ready to be judged. And that is how you make butter. Okay. So, when they judge it, what they will do is they'll cut into it like this. And what they're looking for is the grainy texture, like here. I might have overworked mine a little bit. It's not as grainy as I would have liked to have been. And then they'll press down on it to see if any water comes out. And to be fair, it's quite warm today, so it's sticking a bit, but I can't see much water coming out. And then they will grab a little bit and they'll taste it. Personally, I think I could have made that saltier, but it tastes like butter, which is good.